Welcome to an episode of Astrology Off the Charts, the extraordinary lives of ordinary people. I'm your host, Alexander Mallon, and indeed we have an extraordinary person with us today. Welcome, Danielle. So we have Danielle Haydock, who will tell us about her extraordinary life, and she does have one, really. Welcome,
Thank
Danielle.
you. Thank you.
So, maybe a good place to start for those who are listening on the podcast and also those who are watching on YouTube. Just kind of a little brief reminder of what astrology is about. And I really think astrology charts do describe our soul's journey. It really describes our journey, and also our literal birth is what a chart describes. So let me talk about, Danielle, your chart here. We have August 8 of 1959, 11:17 in the evening, 11:17 p.m. in Glen Cove, New York. And so that means you're a nighttime baby. And there's that sun at the bottom of the chart. Daytime babies, the sun's on the top of the chart. Nighttime babies, the sun's below the horizon. Let's remember that the horizontal line that cuts a chart in half, the circle of the chart, the horizontal line that cuts a chart in half, is the literal earth you're standing on, the earth you're born onto. So for daytime baby, the sun is going to be somewhere in the 12th, 11th, 10th, 9th, or 8th, 7th houses, the top of the chart. Again, nighttime baby at the bottom of the chart. So here we have this quadrant from sunset to midnight, where we have a big, wonderful, loaded chart full of planets here, a planetary stellium for Danielle, with Mercury at 10 degrees of Leo in the 4th house, retrograde. That sun at 15 of Leo with Uranus next to it at 16 of Leo. Pluto next to that at 3 of Virgo. Mars next to that at 12 of Virgo. Venus next to that, Mars and Venus conjoined. Venus now at 16 of Virgo. Moon at 12 of Libra. And right at that horizon line, that western sky, that sunset point, if you could say, the planet Neptune had just set before Danielle's birth. The top of the chart, folks, has Jupiter in the 7th house in that western sky, and Saturn near the top of the chart, near the career angle, also in the western sky. We'll talk about that Saturn as being very important for Danielle's chart. So Danielle, you're a Leo. That means you're a summertime baby. So I'm wondering if you feel that you're aligned with summertime and the warmer climates and warmer days.
Unfortunately, the older I get, the less I like the heat.
The less you like the heat.
Yes.
Interesting. Normally, when people are summery babies, they really love that summertime experience. I mean, that's when this baby came out of mom's body. It was August, midsummer. And a midsummer baby is a whole different kettle of fish than a midwinter. The opposite sign of Leo, of course, is Aquarius, midwinter, where we are right now in February of 2026 doing this recording. So a baby born in the middle of winter is all about that winter experience of practical, functional. And a baby born during summertime, well, I always think of Bill Clinton. He's Bill Clinton, Danielle, was a Leo, a fellow Leo like you are.
I remember that.
Yep. I forget his exact day of birth, but he certainly is a Leo ham with his saxophone. And like you, Bill Clinton had that Venus and Mars next to his sun when he was born. In his case,
I remember studying that chart with you. Yes.
So I should divulge then to our audience that Danielle was a student of mine for a short period of time, and one of my beloved students. Because as we see in Danielle's chart, with that Mercury next to her sun and Uranus, Danielle's a smarty. She's a real smart cookie. It's that mercurial mental with fast-paced Uranus. I mean, you as we'll see with Danielle's life story, her life is quite amazing. I think, folks, a multiple Uranian, kind of a rule-breaking, multi-life experience kind of person here, folks. We're going to be learning about Danielle. Well, so yeah. To have that Venus and Mars, we'll talk about that very important arrangement, being near the sun, Venus, Mars, and Virgo conjoined, literally 30 degrees away, one sign away from that sun at 15 Leo. That's an important arrangement. Danielle, a lot of people will say that Venus is not in any way conjoined that sun. It's too far away. It's a whole sign away. But I have been finding more and more that planets that are 30 degrees away really have an affiliation. It's called the semi-sextile by aspect, but they're really kind of in the same chunk of sky, the same area of sky. And in your chart, they really are like powerfully bundled together. So just for those who are listening and who are fellow students of astrology, who think a 15, 16 degree Virgo Mars-Venus conjunction and a 15 degrees Sun and Leo are too far apart, I want to say I'll be doing future programs on it. I already did one a couple of months ago where Mars was about 30 degrees away or a little bit less from a Sun with a number of policemen. That policemen, firemen, heroes, military guys have Mars and Sun not just conjoined right next to each other, but very commonly in roughly a 25, 22, 30 degree semi-sextile to the Sun, as Danielle has. So going back to the chart here for those who are viewing, that Mars-Venus conjunction with Pluto and Uranus next to the Sun, that is such a huge stellium grouping. When you have planets that are grouped together, I always say, how do you interpret that aspect? It's rather like taking eggs and sugar and salt and milk and whipping it all together. You have a whole different product than just those individual planets and what they symbolize. It's a good moment too, Danielle, to remind listeners and viewers that these planets describe cycles of nature. So we think of course, with Danielle, the cycle of nature for her is being born midsummer. We'll talk about that right exactly on the day of midsummer. That's an interesting piece of Danielle's chart. But each planet has a cycle like the moon, a 29.5-day cycle around the Earth. And so every woman knows her 29.5-day cycle intimately. That's a big one. That's a natural cycle. So each of these planets describe these cycles of nature. And that's what astrology is about. That's how astrology is describing our nature, and these different planets describe sort of where that particular energetic plays out in our chart. So for those who might not know astrology all that well, a brief sidebar here. That each of us are born into a season. So I like to tell my clients, Danielle, and my students, that we're not just born into a sun sign, like Leo in this case, August 8th. We're born into a season sign. That's a really good way to understand. Mom is carrying this baby for 9 months, 3 trimesters, and that baby finally arrives in that last trimester. When mom hits that last trimester, I think, Danielle, you can speak to this more than I can, certainly in this incarnation. When you're at that last trimester, I mean, you are ready. Your body is like, locked and loaded, ripe and ready. Is that right? When you're pregnant.
So, yeah.
So that last trimester is a big one, literally, huh?
It's hell.
It's hell. Well, you're really ready to give birth. The baby's really ready to come out too. And so that moment, that birth date that each of us have had is a building, like really exponentially building. I would think the last, not just trimester, but the last like 3 weeks or 4 weeks. I mean, you're kind of like rolling, right? I mean, your body's just.
Yes. It's brutal. It's brutal.
All right, so it's important to understand that baby comes out during one of these 4 seasons: spring, summer, winter, fall. Our nature, when we come out, literally our biochemistry, I think science will show over time, our photochemical brain chemistry, and mom's chemistry is all interwoven with what season birth you are. So when you think about your sun sign, think of your season sign. So the season of birth is really key because we can look at those springtime babies and those summertime babies, as our cheat sheet is showing here on YouTube. Those babies, Aries, Taurus, Gemini of spring, Cancer, Leo, Virgo of summer, they really are the extroverts. As that sun is rising ever higher every noon hour into the summer solstice of Cancer, June 21st, it's really about that heat of the day building, the light building, long days, short nights, the opposite of wintertime. And so it's really about the person, focusing on their goals. And this is all astrology above the equator, of course, astrology, Western astrology. And so it says when you're a spring, summer baby, it's really about what I'm going to do when I can get out there in the world. If you're born in the winter, as I am, the energy around winter and fall babies is, you can't do much during a hurricane, during a blizzard rather. We just had a blizzard in the Northeast and in New England this 2026 winter time. And so, when you're getting hit with, multi feet of snow, you're not doing much. The nature is commanding the show. It's really what I will do when I get out of this, when I dig my way out, which is why Aries, springtime, March 21st, are such people about, blasting forward. So Danielle, midsummer is playtime. Again, I think of famous Bill Clinton. There are two famous presidents, Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, two very different types of Leos, as Danielle actually is as well. But one thing that joins Leos, Danielle, supposedly, right, is that they are, they were infants when family were gathering for this woman to birth this baby in midsummer. It's vacation time typically. And the baby is the center of attention. So I wonder if you can in any way speak to that. Did that phenomenon, you think, just conjecturing, thinking about your childhood, being the center of attention in your family, does that in any way make sense?
Oh, absolutely, especially since I was last born. My brother is 15 years older than me. My sister is 10 years older than me. So yeah, definitely. I was the center of everything, for sure.
So you had a 15-year-old sibling and a 10-year-old sibling when you came
Yes,
along. So one would think that perhaps in many family systems, those siblings would be almost parental figures to a
exactly. My
newborn.
sister basically raised me until she left the house. Yeah, definitely.
Wow. So that's an important piece. We should look to see if the chart mirrors that, because charts ostensibly mirror these complex family themes. I do
We
have my
have a,
other I do have my other podcast, The Astrology of Family Karma, because
yes,
all of us have some kind of family karma. We're born during some phenomenon of the family's development and mom
mhm,
and dad's development. So you're the last baby. That's an
yes.
interesting turning point.
And a lot of Leos in my family. My father and my sister were their birthdays were 2 days apart, and then a bunch of nieces and nephews. Yeah.
So when I say the tenets of astrology say that Leos are summertime babies, born when kids are home from school, mom's belly is ginormous. In your case, mom's kids were home from school, mom's
Mhm.
belly was ginormous, and a baby's arriving. So
Mhm.
this is a super event for the family. It's
Yes.
why Cancer and Leo babies are known as like the family babies.
Mhm.
It's when in nature above the equator. It's when in nature July and August, when birds give birth to multiple clutches of eggs, and the proverbial Leo the lion has its cubs. The cubs are still young babies when they're a month or two old, growing quickly by all means, but they're still need to be nurtured by mom. It's the family idea. So were your Leo family members Leonian? Would you see them in characterological ways being Leonian?
Oh, without a doubt, yes. Without a doubt. It was always fun. And yes, it was really what was going on in the summer was the only time that the family actually really got together.
Ah, so you had a family that really observed family gathering.
Yeah.
Normally too, folks, Danielle's chart, I'll go back to the chart here. Not only is Danielle a summertime baby, which I always equate to birthing in families and clutches and eggs, multiple creatures, multiple families, multiple birth. It's fecundity. Cancer the crab. The ancients gave Cancer the crab to that upside down Y shape of stars. It looks nothing like a crab because it's about birthing. So going back to Daniel's chart here for a moment. So this is a very super Leo Virgo chart. That moon in Libra, 3 planets in Virgo, next to that Leo bundle, all in a big bundle together. And people will note here, Danielle, from the sunset point of the western horizon, where Neptune is in this chart, Neptune just set before your birth, which is itself an interesting topic. That whole quadrant from the 7th house cusp to the midnight point, the bottom of the chart, is just packed chock full of planets here. Almost all the planets except for Jupiter and Saturn are in that quadrant. That quadrant from sunset, let's say mom and dad coming home for dinner, the family gathering for dinner at sunset. That's the 6th house of diet, nutrition, and wellness. Food, where Danielle has her moon. That 6th house begins that quadrant of the family. Most people think the family is the fourth house only. It's this entire quadrant. What do we do every day at sunset? We come home from the outer world that we just were working and doing our thing. We go out and earn it during the day and come home and cook it up in the pan in the evening. So the evening time between sunset and midnight is family collective time. And when a baby arrives at that time, I believe that mom and dad, who are normally that 9 months carrying, normally they're feeding other kids, taking care of the family. They're in the family groove. But now the baby arrives during those evening hours, as I have. I was a 9 p.m. birth myself. That baby comes into a time when mom and dad are in that family groove. That child is part of that family groove. Like it's a birth is also not only programming, if you will, synaptic wiring, fast wiring. I think it's like every minute there are millions of synapses that are being formed in the newborn's brain. So it's literally a super fast function of adapting and connecting to the environment for the baby. Also true for mom and dad, who are having this creature just come out of one person's body and coming into the family system. So their unconscious connection to Danielle would be family. They're going to put you in a family role, I would think. And I wonder what you might say about that. Does that make sense to you, that I say that they may put you in a family role?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
So this time of birth, an evening baby, below the horizon. Yeah, do you feel that they had a role? Like, did mom or dad have a role for you of being a family keeper, a family nurturer? Now, you were the
Uh,
last born, so one would think that wouldn't be the case as the last.
no, that wasn't really the case. That wasn't really the case, except that no, I really just poured all of myself into my own child, really. Yeah.
I still wonder, however, with this chart, I would think, I'm honoring Danielle's report, but if you were, working in a session with me, I would look at this big grouping and think that this chart implies, go back to that chart, this chart implies that mom and dad are indeed, intending the children to all come together and intending you to be part of that family unit. That as a last baby, that's an important piece. So one thing I teach that I think other astrologers don't look at is that moon-sun relationship. When I see the moon near the sun, in this case, they are sextile to each other. So that moon's in a waxing crescent phase. But when the moon's near the sun, whether it's a waning moon or a waxing moon, I always think of moon mommy and the sun daddy as being united or together. And it's usually the mark of an early couple or a couple who's had children. So maybe the last born. It's very common for it to be some kind of, in other words, it's some kind of turning point of dad and mom's journey together. So this tells me 1959, your birth year, was a turning point in mom and dad's marital identity and their own maturation with regards to family, kids, and the role of family. So I'm wondering if you have any thought about that.
Well, it was interesting because having siblings who were so much older than me, my parents really poured their time and their fun time and their vacations into them. When I came along, they were not really getting along that well. So there were no vacations.
Ah,
I never went on vacation with my parents. They did everything very separately. My mother took me to certain things. My father took me to certain things. So it's kind of interesting that that would be the case. So yes, it was a maturation of their couple that eventually disintegrated. But at that point, it was, yeah, everything pivoting and focusing on me and nothing
well,
else.
they were together for at least 15 years. You had a 15-year-old sibling. So, think about all of us, how we grow in 5-year increments. So, 15 years is a lengthy marriage in and of itself. And, if you have children, I mean, all of that, informs and molds us a great deal. Our own, think of like 25 to 15 years to then 40. I mean, that's a sizable growth phase for anybody.
Yes.
That's the logic here. No, there's astrology, astrologic. It should be logical, rational when we look at this chart as a series of cycles that describe what this newborn Danielle encountered.
Mhm.
So when we look at the chart astrologically with astrological tenets, we say, Neptune conjoined the marriage angle. That's a key issue. Neptune, I look at it as only, 20 degrees thereabouts, half a degree away, half a sign rather, away from that moon. Other astrologers say that Neptune is nowhere near that moon, and I say, as an astronomer, you go out there with a telescope and at the eyepiece, and you will look at these planets and see them actually quite close to each other in the sky. Or, as I like to say, it's good for us to know that, I think a fist held at arm's length is itself 10 degrees of space, and the hang 10 symbol at arm's length is half a sign roughly. So if you think about that up in the sky, out of the whole sky, that Neptune and Moon were right next to each other astronomically. Astrologers say no, they weren't conjoined. I say baloney, they were. Moon mommy and Neptune. Mom is feeling Neptunian. Mom is feeling unclear. Mom is going through an identity crisis. Mom is going through a phase of feeling that she's lost herself or is losing herself. And of course, a lot of moms can feel that having children. That, a lot of moms feel, in fact, that the children, they need mom, and they also feel the husband becomes a child figure. And so a lot of moms will express that they are the ones who are keeping the whole family, and they kind of, my needs are less, that everyone else's needs come first. So technically, Moon Neptune is victim mom, or mom who feels victimized or feels in a role of subservient, dutiful giving to others. Sun Uranus exact conjunction here. That's Sun at 15, Uranus at 16. Says dad is busting loose. Dad's doing his own thing. This chart also says, therefore, that you are genetically more your father than your mother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so being genetically more your father than your mother makes note of that. Because that moon in the 6th house, not too far from the 7th in my astrology way of interpreting charts, says mom needed this baby to partner with her. You were the last child. One reason that mom got married was certainly to have children. That was one of the reasons she married this fellow. And that Venus-Mars bundle next to your sun says that your father was quite the guy. He was handsome. He was sexy. He was, as my spouse says, he was suave and debonair. He was suave and debonair. Suave and debonair might fit better in the 5th house. He was probably a bit of a ladies' man, and she would have been agog over this really, kind of sexy guy who's just full of Leonian power. I'm wondering if you could speak to that.
I don't know. I mean, he did treat her well for sure, but she was very distant. Yeah, she was very distant. And eventually, yes, my mother and I moved to France when I was 11. So we did form that, just the two of us. So we did form that partnership that you were referring to, which was heavy.
So mom had you as a partner in the end as well. The chart usually is descriptive.
Yes.
I think that mom needed a partner at that time. And the fact that you look like your father, or that you have a genetic disposition or a style of character like your father, that can go in any number of ways for a mother. Sometimes that's they're drawn to this child as they see as being a powerful person. I'm going to guess your mother sees you as powerful, and competent, and can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, there are a few things about this chart astronomically that I want to dig into here that I think are really important when we talk about a chart describing nature. The season of birth, the time of birth, and how that time of birth is imprinted in mom and dad, that when you arrived into the family system, when that baby was born. I always say if you're an evening baby nowadays, the typical couple will literally clean up that baby as soon as possible, and if it's an evening birth, they'll take that baby to bed with them. It wasn't always a tradition going back to earlier generations, but now it's pretty much the norm. That baby is literally in bed versus a daytime baby when, dad or mom are maybe still achieving career-wise. So this is a family internal kind of a chart. That family is going to imprint you in a really big, big way. Again, going back for a second to the chart, there is this quality of that Uranus that says, discovered during French and American revolutions, Uranus, a rule breaker, someone who breaks free. So I understand that you would eventually break free of a family system or feel compelled to do so, to find yourself, to individuate. But that wouldn't be the role they would have for you early on. That's an important distinction here. That the breaking away wouldn't have felt necessary if there wasn't an unconscious role. And I think I'm hearing with the divorce, Neptune marriage angle says when the baby is born, there is something maritally stressful likely happening. There is a dissolve. There are various possibilities, but one possibility with Neptune is things are happening behind the scenes on either side of the marriage. That can be other relationships. It could be even the feeling or wish or desire for other relationships for mom or dad. But I'm going to say that that was percolating in this relationship at the time in 1959.
Makes sense, yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
So this chart has some other interesting things. Danielle is born at Lamas, or the cross quarter days, like midsummer. So your nature is that summertime of finding oneself. You know, what do we do? I can't wait for summertime because then I will, once summer comes, then I will, you know, with the boss, I won't be at work, I'll have vacation. Then I can focus on what I want. So summertime births are really for mom and dad, you know, part of that, you know, coming, the family coming together, doing its thing, vacation or connection or bonding. But it's really about what I want. It says mom or dad, typically a summertime birth, son, daddy, talks about what I'm going to become, what I want to do. So even in 1959, with that Uranus-Pluto bundle in your chart, Danielle, it says your father was very focused on himself in those years and what he wanted to create in his life, born with that huge bundle pattern and that large stellium. There's also this Sun-Venus-Mars alignment that in 1962 formed what we just had in 2026, the Sun-Venus-Mars alignment where Venus, Mars, and Sun are traveling together for months at a time, and eventually, due to retrograde motion, and of course the solar motion too, the season, the Sun and Venus will get so close to the Sun that we cannot see them visually. So in a shamanic way, they say that they're in the underworld or they're in the invisible world where we don't see Venus and Mars, and it forms sort of like a bonding with that Sun. So whenever I see a Venus Mars, Venus creativity, arts, Mars execution, Venus, let's say romance, Mars sexuality. When I see those two together, it's the mark of an artist. It's the mark of a creative. It says that you, Danielle, are definitely a creative and an entrepreneurial Mars, Sun creative, and an artist, artistic creative. And about aesthetics. Aesthetics and beauty are very important in this chart. It says your father is an artist and was a handsome, attractive guy. He's a creative guy who with tons of artistic talent and can-do capacity.
Yeah.
So where I was on my little cheat sheet here. Hold on, folks. Get my computer to do what I want it to do. Interesting, too, that Venus is about to turn retrograde in only 2 days after your birth. So we have a retrograde Mercury in your birth chart and a retrograde Venus when you were born. Again, retrograde planets literally mean that they are slowing down their motion visibly, astronomically. So they're kind of highlighted. I always think of it as a blowtorch on metal. You know, you're skimming the metal with a blowtorch, you scar it or you leave a mark, but when you slow down, you burn through. So this chart says a retrograde Mercury that is moving very slowly, mercurial mind moving very pointedly and directively, and Venus that's slow in Virgo at 16, that is slowing down in only 2 days to station retrograde. Retrograde planets are internal oftentimes. They're astrologically considered markers of internalization. So I wonder this idea of mercurial mental and Venus arts, if that leaps off the page as two themes that are in your life.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I'm a writer.
You're a writer.
And I flip houses.
So the creative there. Now let's start with the writer. So you we'll talk about this more, but you've authored a goodly number of books over a wide span of sort of different topics, no?
Yes, and I published a magazine for many years, and yes, I definitely have been making a living writing I had a marketing firm, a public relations firm, and I still do a lot of public relations right now. So yes, writing has been a big part of it. But also, yes, the aesthetic. I mean, I worked with artists. I was an artist rep for a long time. And
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. And so all of that does come together. And when you flip houses, what are you looking for? You're looking for the decor. That's usually why people get into it, because they want to decorate houses. Let's face it.
Wow. So, okay. So there's that Libra moon in your chart. that oftentimes, excuse me, I find Libra planets, Venus, Moon particularly, sometimes Sun as well, can talk about interior decorating. It's the mark of a decorator to have that Venus in Virgo. The signs Virgo and Libra, in and of themselves, to me, are about organization, order, and beauty. And think of it too, Venus and Libra are both autumnal signs. They are about the beauty of the fall, leaves falling. It's about a beautiful time. Even sort of this chart, that Virgo placements of Venus and Mars, when the sun is at that area of those degrees of the chart, it's usually that time we call Indian summer. So the planets of this chart are all in fall. That Libra moon, sort of the Indian summer part of the chart, that talk about beauty. So again, aesthetics and beauty, and Libra is decor and decorating. The moon, of course, is real estate. So this would be where your chart says real estate, property, maybe food, hotel industry. Like I would look at this chart and think, with this big grouping in this quadrant, not just the Mercury in the fourth house, but the whole quadrant being heavily occupied, it is the quadrant of the family in the home. And I would think this person being aesthetic, having an eye for decor and decoration, an artist, a creative thinker, an independent Uranus thinker, with that moon too, I would think that this would be like real estate. I would see this as a person who owns a bed and breakfast. So I do know about your life, but your chart describes this. This is fifth house of speculation and creativity and fun. It's where the sun is every day from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. I mean, there's her sun. She's born 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock daylight time. 10 o'clock standard time, by the way. So there's that sun in that house of play and joy. What we do every day after we have dinner is we entertain ourselves and or others. This is a chart of a person who would love to entertain. And I would join Saturn of construction, excuse me, Saturn of construction, Saturn of architecture, Saturn of form, Saturn that is in very late degree Sag, 0, it's really 1 degree Capricorn, retrograding back into Sag. So that Saturn is trine to those fire Leo planets. So this is a chart of an architect. This is a chart of an interior decorator. This is a chart of a designer. I would give that to Danielle's career, except that Uranus says, I don't want to have to work for anybody else. I don't want to march to the beat of anyone else's drummer. So I'm wondering what your thoughts might be about that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I was an entrepreneur at 6 years old, so there's no doubt about it. But I do remember when I was taking classes with you that you had mentioned the Saturn in construction. This was way before my real estate career. But after I left Long Island and I started seeing architecture in the Midwest and the different styles of houses, I just fell in love with it. And I think that that's where it finally started to blossom, and I was able to recognize that, yeah, there was so much out there and so many other options. But yes, definitely the offering redone homes to people was a really big thrill for me.
Wow, interesting. So again, that Saturn we'll talk about in a bit more, how Saturn is really prominent, not only at the top of the chart. In Astrology 101, the planet that is culminating or near culminating is what the outer world, well, it's astronomically what you literally saw. We'll talk about this Saturn being particularly bright and noteworthy astronomically that night, but it was almost as high as it could get, that nighttime apparition when you were born. And so Saturn describes this outer world structure, this ability to structure, that's really important. That moon also, ultimately, we'll see, talks about structure too. So structure and beauty and art and form. There's something else, though, and I don't have my cheat sheet lined up here. Sorry about that one. The sixth house also rules employees, staff, workers. So you were flipping houses. And the sixth house also rules small animals. versus the 12th large animals. So small animals, maybe you could tell our listeners and viewers about that, where your moon is there in the sixth. She has a moon north node conjunction in the sixth house of small animals. And moon is about nurturance. Moon is the womb. Moon is mommy. I mean, I don't know if you even maybe you raised small creatures. Maybe that's.
Well, I raised rabbits for years, and very shortly into starting breeding rabbits, I started a magazine for rabbit enthusiasts that I kept going for 17 years. So yeah, I was pretty heavily into it.
So I love too, you started a magazine. So Saturn in the ninth house of publishing.
Hmm.
That's really very interesting. Saturn ruling her career angle. Saturn Capricorn at the top of her chart at 20 degrees. And you started a publication.
Hmm.
That Saturn is beautifully trine to that Pluto and that Uranus. It's trine to the whole bundle, really. It's like activating that whole bundle by trine, by flow. And so it says you have an aptitude to, launching something, Uranus, Mars, initiating, launching something and making it concrete. So fifth house is the house of hobbies, by the way. Hobbies and passions. I mean, it is where the sun is every day from 8, 9, 10 p.m. You can say that the children go to bed and mom and dad have passion, So it's the fifth house is about passion. And when we have a loaded fifth, as I do in my chart too, it's a person who's a hobbyist or has, things that they just adore and love and maybe try to make a career from. So sixth house is animals, pets, and also the combination of this quadrant. Fourth house, real estate, entertainment, the moon, people. This is also the mark of a chef or a person who might be a restaurateur. Can you speak to that?
I did have a restaurant. It sort of fell apart, but I did have a restaurant for a while. It was a great experience, and it was interesting. But the restaurant itself is what sort of launched my real estate career, because I took an empty building in the middle of Pennsylvania, well, on the edge of Pennsylvania and Ohio, and had to reconstruct it, do the whole renovation, and install everything required for the restaurant. So it was a learning experience. And then, yes, I was the chef, and it was fun. It was fun.
Now, keep in mind, folks, that this Saturn at the top of the chart, which rules architecture and building and solid material themes. Saturn's cycle, Saturn's orbit is 30 years, and so every quarter of that, age 7, age 14, age 21, age 30, Saturn return, age 60, second Saturn return, age 90, third Saturn. Saturn is about material, functional outer world. And here, Saturn's the highest, most elevated planet in the chart, about making things concrete. It's classically, Danielle, the chart for an architect. That's one of the first things. If you were 18 and said, gee, Alexander, what do you think? I would think architecture, as long as you had a great deal of freedom. Because if you had a sense of being trapped or stuck under somebody else's thumb, that would not work for you. Ergo, the buying and flipping. But this theme of that moon, workers and food service, again, the combination can be hotel people. Can you speak to that in your life experience?
Well, I did have my little bed and breakfast, but I also did a lot of Airbnb before then. So yeah, I mean, I've always had crews. I've always had people working for me, and they always loved working for me for some reason. I don't know why. But
Fifth house, you make it fun.
yeah, it was always a good experience. Yes, I always allowed people to express themselves and to bring to the table what they could, because that's what we're all about, right?
Well, that is this is like all of our charts. That is an offshoot of your family experience.
Hmm.
That is an offshoot of your childhood experience with lots of siblings and mother and father. And I'm going to think with that loaded fifth house, dad was in some way either entrepreneurial himself or creative. He had a creative side that he wanted to express. The Saturn suggests father patriarchy, that maybe career-wise he couldn't express it, that what he did to earn a living was different than what his passion was, which actually was part of what helped that marriage come to a place of difficulty.
Yes,
Is that right?
absolutely, absolutely.
Did your father have creative passions that he felt the marriage as it was, the arrangement with that woman, your mother, his wife, somehow prohibited him for being creative or doing things in a more wild or breakthrough kind of way with that
Oh,
young
without a
age?
doubt. I mean, he was very artistic and he sort of kept that until he retired. Didn't really express that as much as he could have. But he was also passionate of gardener. He was like our garden was just like an English garden or maybe like a
Wow.
French garden with everything. Oh, it's beautiful, beautiful.
Interesting Taurus rising, but normally Taurus is given to gardening per se, or Cancer home. But there's that artistic. So it says Dad has a creative artistic flair, and then again there's the real estate piece that, I just would again wonder. It seems logical to me that if your father, really adored his garden and made it like a showpiece, that would imprint the whole family. Certainly imprinted you.
Yes, absolutely.
Now,
Absolutely.
this theme of that moon in the sixth of service to others and being like a chef, cook, nurturer, again, I would think, to me, if you were a young lady coming to me as a client, I would see the architectural piece, I would see the entrepreneurial piece, I would see the home piece, this whole quadrant, and I would think, it reminds me of when I took an Airbnb in Martha's Vineyard. I would say to you literally, I would like to see you buy property on a Martha's Vineyard vacation kind of a place that people want to go to, where you could love being there with them and really like adventure with them. Like I could even imagine if you were in a proverbial Costa Rica, you'd be doing the paddle boarding with them. Not just selling them or giving them paddle boards, but this is a person who wants to participate in this larger family. So you had a retirement, rather, pardon me, you had a retreat rather in France. Can you tell us about that?
I did, yes. I decided that I was going to do Airbnb and I just happened upon a manor that was for rent. And it had been a bed and breakfast at one point. It was close to a tourist attraction park, historic attraction park, one of the
Ah,
largest in Europe. And so we were about 15 minutes away.
the largest historic attraction park? Can you, what
Yes,
does
and
that
they
exactly
put on
translate
like
to?
they put on like these huge plays, and they have like 7 or 8 things going on during the day, and they have these vignettes of people in all times of history. So you come for 2 or 3 days to be able to see all of these different shows. It's an amazing thing. And the French love history, so that really works. Europeans in general like history.
By the way,
So it
by the way,
was,
folks, Saturn at the top of the chart governs history and historians
oh,
and archaeologists and people who have a fascination or passion for collectibles or for grand older items. Saturn is Chronos, Father Time. So Saturn being prominent again. As you said, your father's gardens were like English gardens, not just gardening, but they were.
yes. He would have loved this place because he loved French architecture and French homes anyway, but this manor was on, I don't know, 40 something acres and had, beautiful lake and all of these different buildings. And the house that I was renting was built in 1802. So very old and majestic, just really, really beautiful, beautiful place. It
Wow.
was fun. It was a lot of fun.
And what I love too is your sharing that this place that you had as a French bed and breakfast retreat was Fifth House, House of Entertainment, Parks of Fun,
Mhm.
Arts. So you're saying that it was only right near the largest. How did you describe it again in France?
It was the largest tourist attraction slash historic touristy place. It was an attraction, a park, like a
Wow.
like a Disney World, but for people interested in history.
So the fifth house is the house of hobbies, fun, play, entertainment, and Saturn, of course, the ruler of the career, is antiques and chrono father of time, chronos, Saturn, things of history. So it's again playing out very interestingly how that literally manifested,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
that your father's, at least your father's passion of gardening brought that up to you. I'm going to think that Saturn square the moon and square the nodes also is really, really important here for your mom. I think that the chart describes that your mom came from something Saturnine or traditional, or maybe even a sense of challenge. Maybe her childhood felt collectively challenged, perhaps either Jupiter through religion, or but in some way, there's a quality of
World War
feeling.
II.
World War II.
Hmm.
So she was then in Europe. Europe. Both your parents are European.
Yes, and they did the exodus with the grandmother and the four kids just carrying their stuff on their back for 3 days
Wow.
to leave, yes, to leave the place that was being bombed to go to Paris. So
Wow.
yeah, it was pretty traumatic.
Your chart suggests to me with the square of Saturn that it was that alone was traumatic, but your mother's childhood itself was more traumatic. Your mother's childhood was more limited than your father's. Since
Yes,
son is daddy, this says comes from a family of larger than life personalities.
most likely.
Did you
It
know
was,
any? Did he have siblings? Did you know any
yes, it was
uncles?
an extraordinary story. My father was born in the United States, as was his older brother, but they were born to a French mother and a German father. And they went back to Germany, made money in the United States, went back to Germany, opened up I think it was like a hotel slash general store. And his mother died. His father died when he was 7, and his mother died when he was 10. And so they went back. He, his older brother, and his younger brother went to France, where the aunts raised them a little bit
Oh,
until she was she was actually killed. And then the brother, who was 18, took his two younger siblings and found a place for them to live and raised the kids.
wow.
So yes, larger than life. Yeah, I mean, it turned all three of them into very interesting, sort of egotistical people.
Well, the Leo says that the family is that he comes, your father, son, in Leo with this big stellium from a larger than life situation and larger than life people. It may involve Mars and Pluto war. That Pluto also talks about, even though Pluto Hades is a male god, like Mercury, Pluto Hades can be gender non-specific. There is a changeling quality here to that Pluto in the fifth house of children and father, and Pluto talks about matriarchy. Saturn is patriarchy, Pluto's matriarchy. So the Saturn aspecting your son in your chart says your father was he comes from a long line of patriarchal figures who were very attached to their lineage and their lineage family
Yes.
story, but Pluto can join the sun. The matriarchs would raise him, either aunts or grandmothers or mother figures or
Yeah.
his mother. So it says really your father. It says your father very strongly influenced by the patriarchy, but identifying with his mother
Yes. Yes.
and women in general.
That makes very much
Your
sense.
father identifies a woman not only as maybe he might have been a bit of a woman's man. Certainly, women would find him very attractive and compelling. But I think he identifies with women. Does that make sense when I say those
Yes.
things?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, a couple other slides here to look at then about this Venus Mars and that hidden quality, that Venus Mars syzygy. This is an alignment when Venus, Mars, and Sun are all aligned together. Maybe Venus or Sun retrograde going behind the Sun, so we can't see them visibly. It's like an amalgamation of the Sun. The energy of spirit, one's spirit life force, and Venus. The circle of spirit that rides on top of the cross of matter. So Venus is about spiritual, aesthetic, and creative, artistic, putting the spirit first. That's Venus. Where Mars is the reverse. The arrow for Mars was added in the last 200 years, but always it was the cross of matter over the circle of spirit, the glyph for Mars. It says that Mars is about earthing things. So here we have this syzygy, this melding of your spirit force, your life force, with creative arts and active, doing. You're a doer. This chart says you're always on the go. You're rarely at a standstill. You're almost always moving. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
even a little bit compulsively.
Yes.
The word peripatetic here literally comes to fit. Peripatetic means, you know, physically and or mentally on the move. And I'm going to say mentally especially, that Mercury is retrograde, that Venus
Yes.
is stationing in 2 days of this chart. So, you know, the arts and creativity, you're always, you're like a generator of creative art. Yeah, classic chart, folks, for a painter or a dancer or a singer. I'm going to say you haven't mentioned it yet about singing or painting or dancing or performing arts on stage, but this is a stage actress's chart too. I mean, have
Mhm.
you ever done anything of that nature?
Just as a child. But my son is a born actor
One,
for
one of
sure.
your children?
Yes, yes.
Wow, did not know that. So
Mhm.
there's that fifth house, and so the children are creative. Your
Mm,
own children are creative artists.
yes.
Literally, one is an actor, and the other one is Mercury, mentally intense and brilliant.
I
Or
only
probably
have
both of them.
I have one child.
Okay. So your child, okay, so your child is an actor and also really brilliant. This is a
Yes,
person with a really super sharp mind.
absolutely. Mhm.
Yeah. So again, you know, we can look at people in our lives through derived houses. We're not going to get into that too much right now, but the chart is descriptive. It certainly says that with all this bundle in the fifth, children have a very huge impact on your life. Normally, a loaded fifth house says this person plans or wants to have children, or that, you know, children for your father is a huge issue. To have a family, to prove himself and prove his worth as a man, is
Mhm.
to forward the family, have the family and the lineage go forward under his name. And normally, the chart would say you identify with that too, but that Uranus is a rule breaker. So tell us a little bit about your ideals of children and having children of your own.
Well, I never really expected to have children or wanted children. And then I wound up having a child at 41, which is a little
Wow,
unusual.
that's
Um,
definitely a little later.
yes, I just later. And my child came into the world female, but identifies as male and is living a life different from what a lot of people would expect. And definitely one of the torch holders for the LGBT community, I
So,
would say.
well, one thing, you know, if you read the chart black and white, you know, astrology 101, the fifth house is the first child, typically in a birth chart. Some say with a woman, the fourth house describes the first child, and the sixth house the second. But I still that's a challenging technique. Still, I still think the fifth house describes children in general in our lives and our attitude, and also who they may be. So the fifth house is the first child, and it says of this child that this one person is going to be bold, ego strong, very brilliant, mercurially intellectual, artistic, creative, independent spirit, and Uranus, a rule breaker, somebody who does not like to play by any societal standards,
Yes.
which in some ways is your father. It's like a hidden aspect of your father, but not how he acted in the outer world. Your father dotted the I's, crossed the T's in the outer world with that Saturn trine your son, but he was like your child, you know, his own independent person.
Well, yes, because during the war he worked for the Resistance and he used to smuggle food into Paris because they had no food. So he
Wow.
was he would speak German when they were to his French friends as they were going by the Germans, so that they would not, of course, be bothered by them during curfew. So yeah, he certainly was along those lines. Yeah.
Wow, that's quite that's a whole story unto itself
Yeah.
for us to dig into, I'm sure. Let's not forget that Pluto in this big bundle talks about well, let me back up. The Venus Mars near Sun Daddy says your father could be very outspoken and very like gregarious.
Mhm.
The Pluto says there's a side of him that's incredibly private and that you don't know everything, which really is this is again your chart. So there's a side of Danielle that's very private, and there's a side of Danielle that's very gregarious. There's a side of Danielle that's very, you know, what you see is what you get. There's a side of Danielle that there's so much more that we don't know, or that you even have to sometimes go through phases where you must keep things to yourself.
Mhm.
So Pluto is, you know, hidden or underworld. So your father and Pluto, of course, Pluto Mars conjunction the military. So the Germans. So in World War II, obviously, your father smuggled food.
Mhm.
Wow. Yeah, that's that. You know that it's in your chart describing your father, but that it's in your chart in such a personal way to your son says these character qualities of your father were very, very important for you, and or
Yes.
that in some way maybe genetically, maybe he even looked down at you in the crib and said, "Oh my God, she's me," and
Mhm.
identifies with you. And so some of these
Sure.
internal feelings he has of what he would like to do and would like to become, kind of like what your child is doing, who your child really is, as you know,
Mhm.
as a uh, kind of I mean, I don't know how to word it these days because I'm getting older faster as the years go by. But you know, LGBTQ, she's I don't know what's the proper term. You know, she's there was a proper term for it actually. She's not identifying, or she is identifying,
We
you know,
identifying as male, yes.
as a male. You're right, but it's sort of a her own choice. She really chooses her sense of being through
Yeah.
and through is
Yes.
what I want to say. So it's an aspect of you. I mean,
Yes.
you're being your own person, not operating, you know, by the constraints of Saturnine outer world convention, although observing outer world convention, knowing how to give people what they want
Mhm.
and deliver it in a way that they comprehend and understand and accept. Yet you're always about doing things differently,
Yes.
I would
Absolutely.
think.
Yeah.
So one factor I didn't get into is that you're born during a minor lunar standstill. I think I addressed it earlier in brief. It means that every 18.6 years we have major lunar standstills, which we're having right now, 2023, 22 through 26. Major lunar standstill. What it means is observationally, the moon is way high over the sky. These major and minor lunar standstill times were about the planets being very, very high, or in this case, the moon very high overhead or very, very low, like unusually notable. So when we look at these ancient standing stone formations, we know that they mark summer solstice times and winter solstice times and even spring and fall turning points of the seasons. But they were actually particularly notable about these major lunar standstills because the ancients knew every 20 years roughly, culture does some kind of radical shift, and we're in that major lunar standstill right now. You were born in 1959 in a minor lunar standstill. What that means is that the moon, in its journey every night, was generally very low to the horizon compared to a major lunar standstill. Those who are listening and those who are watching this program, you can think to yourselves the last few years, by and large, particularly in winter months, when the planets tend to be higher in the sky, the moon has been way, way, way high overhead compared to our usual experience of the moon
Mhm.
during this major lunar standstill of 2025-26. So the minor lunar standstill means the moon is really kind of hovering over the Earth. It's like an Earth mama moon. It's an Earth mama. And so your chart has this moon that is really observationally, as typically will be in the signs of Scorpio and Libra and Sag and Capricorn. When the moon is in those signs of the fall into winter, when the moon is traveling through those signs, it's always observationally lower down in the sky from the northern hemisphere. So, number one, people with moon or planets that are in Libra through Capricorn, Libra through Aquarius, the planets tend to be lower in the sky anyway. But here, it's a particular year, Danielle, that you're born, where that moon is at that minor lunar standstill, really, really hugging the Earth. And so it's that Earth mama. And the moon is about giving birth. The moon's about birthing. The moon's about feeding. The moon's about food. And if I'm not mistaken, you're a chef. You're underplaying it, I think, for our audience. But are you not kind of a chef?
I am. Yeah. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I grew up in France, and I was surrounded by many women who cooked and who were wonderful cooks. And so I would sit in the corner with my little notebook and write down everything that they did. And I learned how to cook with all the women in my family. Your audio has gone
Oh,
out.
sorry. When you had sorry, when you had that retreat house in France near that major park that you talked about, that was a big draw. It was an Airbnb. You had guests come. I'm going to
It was a
presume.
bed and breakfast, so I served breakfast. American breakfast, actually, because that was my thing. I was the
How did
American.
how did that translate? I wonder.
Oh, they loved it. They loved it. The muffins and the bacon occasionally and all of the other stuff. No, it was very well received.
So you really that lunar standstill highlights that moon in your chart that otherwise, yes, astrologically, moon sixth house is one of those placements like moon 10th where we have cooks and chefs. Moon fifth house too, people who love cooking or food, who are foodies. But sixth house is also service people. So it
Mhm.
says you weren't just a wonderful chef. You had your own restaurant for a while, but it was part of your bed and breakfast.
Mhm.
Your chart is like a classic chart for bed and breakfast. I still say, in fact, Danielle, that of all things that you're doing, I would think a bed and breakfast kind of dynamic would be your ultimate, not your penultimate, your ultimate joy,
Mhm.
fifth house joy in life.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
let's move on to some other interesting things about that moon, home, and the inner world of the home. When you were born, as I said, I may have made reference earlier as we started that the Saturn had its rings wide open. Saturn's rings go through a phase over a 30-year period from what they're doing right now, where the rings are edge on and astronomically disappear through a telescope, more or less disappear. We had rings edge on when Barack Obama was elected. The constraints of the norm of our government were, if you will, ripped off. We had our first person of color as the president. When Donald Trump was first elected, we had rings wide open, which is the phase that we had when you were born. Those rings wide open. And so in your birth chart, that Saturn, although it's low to the horizon when you were born, it was super, super bright with those rings wide open. It talks about material form and material constraint, or being able to apply material, function. So it's again like I would look at your chart and think architecture. What do we see in this chart that is really possible the outer world building architecture. So now we're on to another career. So we've had creative arts. You supported artists. You had your own advertisement agency.
Yes.
You were a publicist. So I should actually have you tell us.
And then I got bitten by the real estate bug.
Well,
And
well, well. First, you bought the restaurant and had a restaurant, the food moon thing. But that buying of that restaurant, you said, launched the appeal for real estate buying, selling, and flipping. Is that right?
yes, yeah. Yeah, trying to transform and learning how to transform a space, even though it was very constrained because it was a commercial space, sort of like started that. And then I moved to a part in Ohio where all of a sudden real estate was very affordable. And so all of a
You
sudden,
mean compared to New York?
well, compared to New York, yes, compared to a lot of places. And so that really helped me to build that whole career and to launch my flipping career, which was interesting because once again, because I am a rebel, and I did not want to get taken advantage of by my contractors. And I wanted to make money as well, which I didn't think was going to happen if I let my contractors work the way they wanted to work. So I really took control and I built this whole system because I love systems. I built this whole system to manage an entire flip and to manage my contractors and to manage everything, every little detail. And I just learned how to build a roadmap of a flip from start to finish. And it really is the whole thing of how you can look at things from start to finish and make sure that everything falls right into place the way it should. It's
So I believe that we're on to your next Mars, Sun, Venus, alignment, entrepreneurial effort, which I believe you've written like your seventh or eighth book.
I don't think I don't think I've written that many. Well, maybe. I mean, I wrote a lot of French manuals for the French language when I was, yes. Um, so I've written two books about real estate. One for Airbnb, people who are starting Airbnbs, the beginning things, what you need to know. And then the second one, which is the system that I created, which I call It's Your Flip. Um, so that's one book that I wrote recently.
So tell us about It's Your Flip. Tell us about a little more. Flesh that out for us if you can.
So my real estate career has spanned over a period of about 20 something years. And during that time, I've done all sorts of things. I started with this restaurant in commercial real estate. And then I went into rentals, and then I went into land contracts and residential assisted living and flipping and Airbnbs. And I just really love the whole aspect of changing a home entirely and offering something that's completely different from what it started out to be. And I like the feeling of giving somebody a forever home. So that was really something. Having gone through all of these different phases in real estate, I'm well versed in trying to find capital. How do you flip without using your own money? Because in real estate, I never used my own money. I always use other people's money. And I started out with $0, and that's always how I did my real estate transactions. At one point, I owned about 20 houses. So I'd say that it worked out pretty well for not putting in any of my own money.
Wow, that's quite amazing.
But
Brilliant.
it's just a question of really taking reality and turning it into what works for you. And I'm really good at that angle. Spin, I guess you call it.
Well, and that's again, your chart astro speak wise. Your chart has that phenomenal Saturn that's beautifully aspecting your whole chart. And again, one phenomenon of the Saturn astronomically in your chart is that it's nearly out of bounds. Saturn is one of those planets that cannot astronomically go out of bounds, but it is darned close here to going out of bounds, being particularly low in the sky, like really, really earthbound, really low in the sky observationally. So it's bright, the rings are wide open, and it's really, really low in the sky observationally speaking. But when you were born, it was the highest, most elevated planet. So it talks about the outer world being very Saturnine for this chart. So again, the rings wide open, that Saturn being really rather high, rather low, rather to the Earth, out of bounds. So this term out of bounds, basically, out of bounds planets are planets that are either very, very high or very, very low compared to their usual visible manifestation. It's really the Earth, the Sun's path, or the Earth's path around the Sun, or the Sun's path around the Earth observationally, from a zodiacal standpoint. So when a planet is really high above that path, the ecliptic, or really low, it's notable. It's sort of like saying it's in some way supercharged. The person's got something really like out of the norm. So when we see people usually people who have got odd, extreme careers or qualities to their nature, commonly have an out of bounds planet that symbolizes they take it beyond the norm. And so that Saturn in your chart is nearly out of bounds. Most astrologers would not notice that. They would be looking for it to be out of bounds altogether, but it's darned close to being at the extreme. And so,
I'm extreme.
what's that?
I am extreme.
Well, the idea that you had 20 properties, none of which you funded with your own money, I think is certainly entrepreneurial, this big fifth house, and is certainly really interesting, noting that Saturn is in the ninth house of law and contracts, and not far from the eighth house of resources and money. That's an important piece, again, we look at, astrologers tend to look at each house as meaning something, and that they're separated, but really they ought not to be. We're looking at this quadrant of law, legalities, resources, monies, joint monies, lenders, banks, banking, and deals. So that Jupiter is in that house of deals and it rules lenders. So you're a person who can really finagle deals with people. You're a great connector.
Yes, a negotiator.
You're a
I think
negotiator.
that's really important. Negotiation is, especially in real estate, it's key.
So as charts do, there's always layer upon layer upon layer that we could speak to. We'll maybe come back another time and flesh out more, perhaps. But this theme of Neptune on the cusp of partnerships, the Jupiter is expansive. The Neptune can be unclear. So I'm quite certain that some of the people you partnered with, or that some of the lenders you had, or co-operator or co-lenders, there were some Neptunian confusions that undoubtedly arose with Neptune square that Mercury in the fourth. In the end result, you probably had some people who were not totally compos mentis. You had some people who maybe had substance or alcohol or drug problems. I'm going to wonder if that's true.
Well, there are certain industries like construction and restaurants that attract usually people who have substance abuse issues and felons and people who have committed crimes and yes, all of that. And real estate, unfortunately, is really rife with people who are not necessarily looking out for others, but really for themselves. So, yes, there is a lot of that in the industry, unfortunately. A lot of people try to take advantage of others. I have always been honest and I've always tried to take care of other people in real estate as well, but it's not the case for everyone. So yes, I've been taken advantage of, I've been stolen from, and I've had plenty of issues with people around me in real estate. But in the end, it still is an amazing industry.
Well, I want to note too, as we come to close shortly, that not only are you multi-creative, multi-careered, so many different aspects this chart has indeed manifested. You've lived, you've manifested your chart, as our charts in a way describe, they describe our gift, where we are gifted. And this chart would be a person who's mega gifted in many ways, in concrete, down to earth ways, but also Uranus and Neptune in ways that are, with Pluto too, in ways that are really beyond beyond the norm. Like you're always seeking beyond the norm. And I think breeding rabbits, writing a rabbit magazine, publishing the magazine for a few decades, and then selling it for a good profit to fund other parts of your life is that sixth house moon, again, another version of feeding, nurturing. It's really quite notable. So tell us a little bit then in closing here about your book and how people can get in touch with you.
So my website is itsyourflip.com, you are. And on it, you can get information about real estate, about flipping. There's a newsletter, there are podcasts, there's all sorts of information. And I also do mentoring for people who want to flip or who are stuck in the middle of a flip or who don't know how to get out of a problem with having a flip. They can come to my website. They can contact me at this number. I'm very happy to talk about whatever your problems are in flipping. Outside of the mentoring, I mean, I just like a lot of people in real estate. We like to talk about it, so feel free.
And I'm certain that they'd be creative ideas, that outside the box ideas like funding and financing, and maybe even, if I recall, real estate investment groups and such that you've had experience.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, folks, so we've had indeed a person with an extraordinary life who otherwise seems like an ordinary person with an extraordinary life. Danielle, thank you and bless you.
Thank you.
For those of you who want to, book a session with me, here's my contact and my contact information, and also my little, point your phone and grab the the data. Love to hear from you too. Any notes or comments, feel free to make, and we'll definitely have Danielle's information on the show notes. So thank you, Danielle, so much. It's been really always magnificent to spend time with you. Thank you for sharing your amazing life story with us, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you.